So today we are going to talk one of the big questions since the hurricane hit Southwest Florida, Hurricane Ian. It has become a major concern for people now that are considering moving to Florida of what insurance costs and what coverage you need and where should I move to, right? And I'm good at answering a certain amount of questions, but the people that really know the answers to the question are people that actually represent and sell insurance. So today I have a professional on with me today to help us out with some of these questions. I have Leah Boyle from Brightway Insurance in Ponte Vedra, Florida, and she's going to help walk us through some of those questions that I hear from you all the time. Leah, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited to help answer just some of those blaring questions that people have. So yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and I appreciate you coming on. I think one of the big things you said to me, I think it was via email or whatnot, you're like, I really want to make sure I can educate people. And that's so important. I'm going to point that out because buying a house is a big deal. It can be really scary. Florida seems scary because of hurricanes. Lending seems scary because of interest rates. The media makes everything even more scary. And the reality is, as I said in many other videos, I've done videos on insurance, I've done videos on interest rates. It's really important for people to educate themselves because that will help take away that fear that everyone is getting exacerbated with right now. So that's why I do these videos, because it's people educating themselves will feel better about the decisions that they're making. So let's jump right into it. The big elephant in the room that everybody asks me that's not from Florida specifically, and I have a lot of people from all over the country, even all around the world, they're asking about, does Jacksonville get hurricanes? But let's first start with this. Are our insurance rates affected by what happened in Northwest Florida with Ian? Did our rates get affected by that?
Yeah, so what is most likely going to happen with that is we're really not going to see anything until next year, most likely, because what happens is all of these insurance carriers, what they do is they have to go out and buy insurance for themselves. It's called reinsurance. And they have to do that before the hurricane season, which begins on June 1st. So typically around the beginning of the year, like April, May, that is when they are going out to find their own insurance. So that's really when we're going to see it, because they've already gotten their insurance for the year earlier this year. So nothing's going to be impacted. But yeah, I would definitely think we're going to start seeing, especially also too, just with the market this year. I mean, we've had about a carrier a month just struggle and go out of business. So I think next year is really when we're going to see the rates being impacted, and we'll definitely see some of that from Hurricane Ian as well.
Yeah, I've heard there are a lot of insurance companies that have bowed out after this hurricane.
Yeah.
The question that follows that is, did we have many claims? We're in St. Johns County in the Ponte Vedra area, correct? I am. I know you are too.
Yep.
Did you guys see a lot of claims from anything regarding flooding or whatnot from the last storms, Hurricane Ian, even though we weren't directly impacted?
Yeah. So really around this area, the Jacksonville, St. Johns area, we've maybe had a handful of, minor claims, like some roof damage, no flooding up here. However, so we insure all over the state of Florida, although our, office is located here in St. John's. So actually one of our agents here in this office does a lot of business in the Lee County area, which is really where this, Hurricane Ian hit the worst. So that has been devastating. Thankfully,
Is that the Fort Myers area?
It is. Yep. So Fort Myers, Cape Coral, that area. Luckily they have insurance, so we're able to help them out. But that's really where we're seeing all of the flooding claims. Actually, too, we have some clients in Orlando, and when you think of Orlando, that's like the middle of Florida. They even had flooding there.
Mhm.
So we're a flat state surrounded by water. Wherever you are at, the whole state of Florida is a flood zone. So that is why I bring it back to the education piece, because so many people just ask me, hey, am I required to have flood insurance? Is the mortgage going to require me to have that? So that's another conversation, but we want everybody to at least be aware and know what flood coverage is, how it works. I've had people say to me, yeah, I had this coverage and it didn't, help me at all. So there's a difference between flood coverage and just your traditional, hurricane coverage on your homeowner's policy. So it's definitely letting people know what each offers, helps them determine, if that's something that they want to spend some money on to protect
Yeah,
them.
and we're going to get into that in a minute. Another question I wanted to talk to you about before we get into the flood, because that's going to be a big part of our conversation, is Florida is a really big state. I'm from South Florida, and I tell people all the time, one of the reasons we moved up here, not just because of the fantastic public school system in St. Johns County, but I noticed a great difference in my insurance rates as well
Oh
as
yeah.
property taxes. Cost of purchasing a home here compared to South Florida was a lot better at the time, and I still think it's a lot better now. Just to clarify for people, Florida is a huge state. Depending on where you are, rates are all going to be different, correct?
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Right.
So yeah, and I don't even know where to draw the line, but yeah, I mean, Miami, all of those just is, yeah, South Florida rates are just super intense. And part of it is just because, the hurricanes that have happened in the past, and carriers just don't want, like, we have carriers that are writing business all over the state of Florida besides South Florida. So just some carriers don't even want to take on the risk of being there. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, rates are dramatically different here than they are even in Orlando or the Panhandle. So definitely, I think the Northeast Florida area here, probably besides maybe some middle parts of the state, definitely have way better rates than, or I guess they're just less. But that of course comes with just, I mean, South Florida is beautiful too. So
Yeah, no, I get it.
yeah.
No, I mean, I did a study on hurricanes in South Florida. Well, actually, the Panhandle is most prone to hurricanes because of all
Mhm.
the warm water from the Gulf. But
Yeah.
then South Florida, Southwest, Southeast Florida are almost tied as far as most hurricane prone. And we are last on that list here in Northeast Florida. So that is certainly something to keep in mind. And then, of course, if you're living on the St. Johns River on a body of water, or living in Ponte Vedra Beach or Jack's Beach, you can be in the same house as someone living inland that's not in flood zone areas, and your insurance is going to be dramatically different, right? I imagine.
Yeah. So yeah, and I'll get more into like the flood stuff when we go into that. But yeah, I mean,
Go
anything.
ahead. You might as well get into it now. Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead. Yeah.
So, really what has happened is, so I've worked in insurance a couple years now. So when I first started, um, if you were in the X flood zone, which X flood zone's the lowest risk flood zone, it's the X flood zone. So if you
Mhm.
were in the X flood zone, it was a standard $387 a year. I could tell people that,
Mhm.
it's this. So last October, they completely changed everything. So they went away with the flat rates for the X flood zones because, FEMA over time, they've obviously been capturing a lot of data. They're looking at their maps and they're saying, okay, we have some people that are, like you mentioned, on the St. Johns River that were labeled as being in an X flood zone. So they are paying $400, whereas somebody on the beach is paying $5,000 for their flood insurance, or excuse me, $400 versus $5,000. What they were seeing is that, maybe their map wasn't totally right, because somebody that's by a body of water is still going to inherently have more risk than somebody that's in the middle of the state. So they said, they were just losing so much money basically on claims because they weren't charging enough for those X flood zones. So
Mhm.
they went away with all of that. It's called the risk rating 2.0. So it's just made flood so much more complicated. And I think that's part of what is getting into people's minds of thinking it's just this complicated, everything like is going to flood here in Florida, which, I mean, it may or may not, but that's what we're here to help educate people on the flood zones and all of that. So really, so I guess back to the original question of, is somebody on the river going to be different than somebody in the coastal area? For flood, it used to be that way. Homeowners, definitely if you're in a coastal area, that's just inherently going to have more risk. Not a lot of carriers want to provide coverage there. But yeah, it's very intense and complicated now, which is nice to have, an insurance agent that's, there to help educate, answer your questions and all of that.
Yeah. I find, and I've had this also spoken to me from buyers that are resorting to the FEMA map, that they're very confused. It isn't the most user friendly.
Not at all. Yeah. And really on that, I mean, it's great for people and I was actually I don't go there a whole lot, but I was actually poking around in the FEMA site before we got on this call just to kind of help navigate. And it is very confusing. It's great for them to go there and educate themselves, but really at the end of the day, I'm more than welcome to help look at that with people, because my systems, I'm going into FEMA's, it's just, it's confusing to look at. So I'm more than happy to help answer people's questions like, hey, what flood zone is this? My maps from my carriers are way better, way less confusing than what they're going to find online. And it just comes with context of me being able to describe it. But I think part of the confusion too is just that they've completely changed their whole rating system. So it's gotten very confusing.
How many levels of liability are there? I mean, if X is a no flood zone and it's the cheapest flood insurance you get, how many more levels of?
Oh yeah, great question. Yeah, so oh goodness, I really don't know how many flood zones there are, but I can say that any zone that starts with the letter A or V, those are the highest risk flood zones. So if you're looking at a home and you're confused by looking at the FEMA site, I'm more than happy to help run it in my system. So yeah, if it starts with an A or a V, that's the super high risk flood zones. That's when the lenders are going to require you to carry the flood insurance. And then X being the lowest. I think there's so it goes like V.
That helps.
VA, A, E. So I probably like maybe 10 different ones.
Wow.
But anything with an A or V, that's going to be super
the
high
worst.
risk. And then X being the lowest.
Wow, I didn't realize there was that many. That is complicated for sure.
Yeah, it is very complicated.
Yeah, I mean it's intimidating for people that are not from Florida and don't understand it to begin with.
Absolutely.
I don't live in a flood zone. I purposely wanted to make sure I was in an X, and I was shocked because we don't even live in a flood zone, and I still bought flood insurance because it was like $350 a year.
Yeah.
And then I have a home that I bought for $575, and I think the rebuild coverage I have is $400 or $500, something really high, and my insurance is still only like $1,400 maybe right now. Now next year it'll probably go up, but I mean, if you think about it, all that coverage plus I have flood insurance, even though I'm not in a flood zone, I just prefer to have it for $300. It gives me peace of mind. So that, just to give people an idea, a $600,000 house in St. Johns County, very good coverage, and flood insurance all for like $1,600-$1,700 a year.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah. No, not bad at all. And so another thing too for people to look at, and what will, just because this area is growing so fast, there's a lot of new construction homes, right? So the newer construction homes, if you're looking at a 2022 home in St. Johns County, like you said, $600,000, I've seen policies less than $1,000,
Right.
but definitely say Newer homes, $600,000, St. John's area, you're looking anywhere from, 1,000 to 16, 1,700, depending on, all the endorsements you add onto the policy if you want flood and all of that. But really the new homes have the best rates. And so I like to bring that up to people just because some people are they just base their home buying off of insurance. I've actually had people reach out like, what are things I should look for trying to lower my insurance. So it's definitely going to be your newer construction homes, and not something super coastal.
Yeah, that's a big factor. I didn't include that. I have very max insurance, so I have very good coverage, but I do have a fairly new home. I bought it new and it's only 3 years old. So that
Yeah.
is a huge thing, which leads me to another thought. And people get shocked by this, but as an agent, I've been learning also that back in the day when a roof was 20 years or older and needed to be replaced, you couldn't sell it because if the buyer was using a lender, the lender required insurance and the insurance company wasn't going to insure a house with an old roof. Well, now with all the insurance fraud that was going on roofing in Florida, I think now I see some people saying it needs to be at least 13. It can't be older than 13, 14, 15 years older. Otherwise, you will not find roof insurance. Is that accurate?
Yes. So roofs, goodness, they are a huge, huge deal. And it's just exactly what you said, all of the fraud that's really come around it.
Yeah.
So yeah, from a couple years ago, they were, as long as your shingle roof, it was 20 years old, there was no curling shingles, there was no cracking, it looked good. They're okay with it. Today, um, that just doesn't happen. So yeah, and honestly, I've seen some carriers don't even go above like 8 or 10 years on shingle roofs. So
Wow.
but and I also do want to bring up too, so with all of that going on with the roofs, we have actually seen an uptick in writing policies with Citizens Insurance. So Citizens Insurance is the state-based insurance carrier here in Florida. So I can't remember, I think it was Hurricane Andrew, that basically created Citizens because it wiped out a lot of homes. There was a lot of damage from it. Carriers just could not afford to be in the state of Florida, and there was no option for people who couldn't find insurance. So that was how Citizens was made. There for people who, can't find insurance or it's extremely expensive. So we write, with them a lot in South Florida because not a lot of carriers are there, and it's an affordable rate rather than $20,000 a year or something crazy.
Mhm.
So, and they actually are our carrier that we go to for older roofs because they're okay. They will go up to 20 years on a shingle roof as long as, it looks good. We have an inspection showing that it's got life left still. So there are options, but yeah, it's very hard. Roofs are just such a big deal. And so, and what we were seeing too last year when the market was hot, right, was, yeah, people were saying, hey, I'm trying to buy this home, but yeah, it's got a 25-year-old shingle roof. And that's when, people were just replacing roofs to sell their house. So it's crazy how it's shifted. But yeah, I'm glad we touched on that because,
Yeah, we're seeing that now where a home will have a roof that's over 15 years old and the seller has to basically replace the roof if they want to sell the home or, on the open market freely. Unless it's a cash buyer and they don't need home insurance right
right.
away. In some cases, you can close afterwards and get the credit to repair the roof.
Yeah.
Um, but let me ask you something. I mean, I lived in South Florida in a condo in the beach, and we couldn't get insurance, and we had to use Citizens. Is there anything wrong with using Citizens as your insurance? What's the bad part of it? I mean, if you live on the beach or you do live in the water and it's hard to get insurance or you can't get insurance from a normal carrier, why would anybody look down on a government like Citizens Insurance?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I think what it is a lot of the times too is a lot of people, and rightfully so, are looking at reviews online of insurance companies. And I will just say that I'm sure nobody is going to go on and leave how they've had a great experience. People are just, as with insurance companies, they just have such this mindset of, oh, I just need it, like whatever, like I hate it, I hate everything. So I think they're part of it is they're looking at reviews, just that's where they're coming up with some of their opinion. They are just, oh, that's some people look down on government assisted programs, I guess.
Sure.
But there's nothing wrong with it at all. We've wrote more with them this year than any other carrier because people going out of business, they're one of the most stable carriers. I mean, they're backed by the government. They're not going anywhere.
Right.
They've actually, and what we've seen too with some of the claims that we've had this year, from the hurricane, from other things, Citizens has actually been one of the first carriers to pay out claims. They're not arguing. They're able to have a seamless process with the claims. And at the end of the day, when you're looking at insurance, that's the most important part is if something happens to your home, are you able to, have them help you out with that?
Sure.
That's what we pay for them to do that. So I think that's super important. Nothing wrong at all. They offer all the same coverages. They're, as any other policy. A few things that are different about them. So what they could do potentially, and this is really the only like downside to them, is they can basically give assessments. So if, like how we just had Hurricane Ian and they didn't have enough money to pay out their claims, and they can actually assess everybody that lives in the state of Florida. It doesn't even matter if you have a policy with them or not, but they can assess us, or no, it is just if you're a policy holder. So they can assess you even if you didn't have a claim. So say, we're up here in St. Johns County, you have Citizens, they're trying to pay out claims down in Fort Myers. They don't have enough money. They can assess people a certain percentage of their premium to help pay out those claims.
Okay.
We've never seen that happen, but that's a potential. But no,
It's so they don't run out of money, I guess. They're just basically putting a little bit more on everybody else's premium to raise capital to
right.
pay to remediate the issues.
Yeah.
Very interesting. What else can we do to educate buyers? If you're not in a flood zone, do you recommend, is that really necessary to have flood insurance? I think it is. I don't know why, but I mean, for $350 a year or $400 a year, I get peace of mind, even though I'm in an ex. I mean, do you have an opinion about that, or?
Yeah, kind of what I
do a lot of people get it, I guess, is what I should be asking you.
So, the past, month they have because of, Hurricane Ian, but yeah, it's not something that people, before this hurricane was not a super big topic, right? So, because since that has happened, I think it awoke a lot of people because there was flooding in Orlando. That's crazy that happened in the middle of the state. So we're a flat state surrounded by water. There's bodies of water everywhere. And honestly, when a flood comes, it's not paying attention to a flood map. It's not like, oh, I'm going to hit this area harder. So it's really every single person should carry flood insurance. And I do just kind of actually want to touch base quickly just on what it covers. So, or not what it covers, but how it works a little bit more, just so people can understand that piece too. So on your traditional homeowners policy, you have, so there's hurricane coverage. So if a tree falls on your roof and, busts the roof, rainwater comes in, there's damage, that's 100% covered on your homeowners policy. Naturally rising water is what the flood coverage protects against. So for these homes down, in Fort Myers area, what's happening is the adjusters are coming out and looking at the water line that is in the home, and they're saying anything below this water line is not what we're not covering it on a homeowner's policy. That is a flood policy that's going to be paid out on your flood policy 100%. Anything above that, the water line, that's on your homeowner. So we've unfortunately had some people that don't have flood insurance down there, and they think that they, have coverage for that. for the naturally rising water that entered their home, and they don't, because that's not covered on a standard homeowner's policy that is specifically flood. So I think absolutely 1,000% everybody should carry it. You never know, and it's always going to be too late when you need it,
Yeah.
to go out and get it.
It's a good point you made up, because I'm hearing it a lot. Basically, people thought their home was covered because they had hurricane coverage, right?
Yep.
And insurance companies are going, wait a minute, your house was first affected by the floods, not the hurricane, and because the floods affected you first, then your flood insurance should cover that, and they don't have flood insurance, and so it's an uprising, I guess, because there's so many people that didn't have flood insurance.
Oh yeah.
And the reason is what they say it is because it's so expensive. But listen, these are all the considerations. That's why we educate people that if you're going to buy a home, you're in Florida, like you said, you need to consider these things. And the same, if you decide where you're going to live in Florida, look, insurance companies have done many, many studies. You can look it up. I did. And you can see where the states are, the part of the state are most prone to hurricanes. And you can also find out where they're most prone to flooding as well. And then if you can't figure that out, that's why it's good to have a good agent. It's good to call Leah up and say, hey, what's your experience? It costs you nothing to make a phone call and get educated. And I understand exactly what my clients, and I'm included. If it's not an X, I don't even touch it myself personally. But if somebody wants to live near the water, or they love a particular house, then call Leah. It takes you a few minutes to get on the phone and say, hey, can you tell me, this is the address. Can you tell me about this home? And she'll be looking at the age of it, where it's located, the flood zone, all those kind of liabilities, and what it's going to cost you. And that should help you in your decision-making process. So, and I love that, because you were so willing to come on today and answer all these questions. And that's all you need. You need a good team. You need a good agent. You need a good lender, and you need a good insurance person. Those are your base. You need a lot more than that, but those are the three that helps you overcome. You need a good title company, but that helps you overcome any doubts, fears, or anything that you may have, and reservations. And these kind of things that happen are raising awareness. And I'm sorry for it's a horrible thing for people to have to go through. But we should all learn from that, not forget about it, and make sure we get the right coverage. So, Leah, is there anything else I should be asking you, or am I forgetting anything? How long does a claim take if somebody calls and says, hey, I do have a flood claim, or a tree did fall, and I did have some trees fall a little bit here during Ian, younger trees in the neighborhoods that didn't take root yet. But let's just say one fell through my garage window, whatever. How long would a claim like that take around these neck of the woods here in Northeast Florida?
Oh, geez. Well, if we're talking specifically about like a claim after a hurricane, that's probably going to take longer, just because there's going to be many people affected.
Right.
So the people that we've had in, the Fort Myers area, so Hurricane Ian hit, I think, the 27th of last month. So I think we've only had a few people let us know that they haven't heard back. So, I mean, and I don't know if the claims are completely done, but adjusters are getting out a couple weeks, and hopefully sooner than that, but we've seen it, go from anywhere to 2 days to 2 weeks that adjusters are coming out. From there, I would say a couple months.
Oh, wow. Okay. And I assume they give priority to the people that are most affected.
Yeah. And so, they're looking at, if, a home's completely destroyed, then, sometimes they're just cutting out a check right away. Right. So,
got it.
But yeah, I would say, adjusters coming out, a couple days to a couple weeks, everything getting paid out. maybe a couple months. We, of course, we've seen things happen longer than that, but I would say that's a good.
Yeah, that's a good thing that you just mentioned, by the way, because people don't know what adjusters do or what is an adjuster and what the difference is between a private adjuster, a public adjuster, or whatnot. Do you want to touch on that, or I can as well? You go ahead if you want.
Yeah. So, basically what happens is, and we're a broker too. So we, when people call us to say that they have damage to file a claim, we want to get them right to the carrier so they can get all of the details over to them. I wouldn't want to file a claim for somebody because I don't know all of what's going on. I want them to specifically get with them to get all of that. So we're getting, them over to the carrier to have a conversation, open up that claim. So then the insurance carrier is sending out an adjuster, and pardon me, I don't know the difference between private and public. So
I don't know if it's private, but I think so. A public adjuster would represent you as the person that's affected, right? Kind of going through, I've been through this in the past. So I guess your carrier either has an in-house adjuster that works for them or a third party, correct?
Right. Yeah.
An independent adjuster. And then there are some adjusters that are just public adjusters, and they work for you as the individual that's affecting the policyholder. So let's say you have a really complicated claim. You as the homeowner can hire a public adjuster who specifically works on your behalf to settle the claim with the insurance company. So that's the difference. I know it as of that.
And that's right. Yeah. Because too, there's, there can be discrepancies in, their adjuster coming out and saying it's going to cost X amount to repair this. I think if there's discrepancy, then you can have a third party come in and kind of say, okay, let's look at everything. Let's see, what this is all going to cost to repair. So yeah, they're the ones coming out firsthand, looking at everything and then getting with the carrier to, move those steps forward.
Yeah. And it's up to you. It's again, a public adjuster is purely on your behalf, working with the adjuster of the carrier, and they come to a conclusion of what the actual effects are of the claim and also what is covered and what is not. It's so important for people to understand their policies. I know it's complicated. There's a ton of verbiage, but people, if you don't understand it and they're making a claim and then they find out it's not covered, it's even worse. So it never hurts to have someone who's in the business, like an adjuster, deals with insurance companies all day or works for an insurance company, to really give you an insight on that as well. So
yeah.
That
Absolutely.
helps. Yeah. Cool. So I guess, can I share your information I'll send it put it underneath here in the information section of the video so that people can reach out to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Email, is probably usually best, but I don't have a direct line, but I have an office phone number for our office here. So I will, definitely get that over to you, Greg, so you can put that. But it was just super awesome coming on here today. I've never had a chance to do something like this, so it's fun for me to talk about all of the ins and outs and really help educate people. Insurance is something that for most people is something that, they're getting a loan, so they're needing it. So we don't really look at ourselves as salesmen. We just look at ourselves as, this is something you need. We want to help educate you on exactly what you're getting, what you do need. And like Greg said, it's completely free to talk to me about anything. You can give me a call anytime. I'm happy to look at flood zones, just quotes on homes, to help navigate coverages on policies. It's really what I'm passionate about. So,
yeah, and she's local here in Northeast Florida, so she knows the area well, and that helps as well. Especially some of the larger carriers that are not local, they have no idea generally. So that would help a lot when you call someone who's local, in St. Johns County or in the Jacksonville area. And it's just one of those things that is not exciting to do. And it's the same with talking to a lender. And that's why it's so important for me as an agent and broker to partner up with people that know how to talk to people and have heard it all and explain things. And so, you know what, educating people, explaining it to them, it's not about sales, it's about service, and the sales will come. Because if you're legitimate, you're willing to put yourself out there, people are going to identify with that and go, hey, you know what, she seems pretty real. I'm going to give her a call and make sure I do what I don't feel like doing, which is shop insurance, so that I know what my, not only do I know what my mortgage is going to be with my lender, I'm going to know what my home insurance is going to be. I'm going to be clear on understanding what my property taxes will end up being, and all those good things. So Leah, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I can't wait till we get our first deal going together and helping some people out. And it was such a pleasure having you on until the next one.
Yes, until next time. Yeah, thank you so much, Greg, for having me.
Well, I hope you found value in today's interview. If you're new to the channel and you want to know everything about Jacksonville and the surrounding areas, make sure you subscribe and don't forget to tap the alerts bell so that you can be the first to know about what's going on here in the Jacksonville area. I get calls from people just like you every day that are trying to make a move to the Jacksonville area, whether they're moving in 9 days or 90 days, it doesn't matter. Shoot me a text, send me an email, or give me a call. My information will be in the description below. And of course, don't forget to check out my next video on hurricanes in Jacksonville. Do we get them? And how do we prepare for hurricanes here in Northeast Florida? Well, until then, I hope to show you around town.